working on this for the last few weeks, and part of the problem is that I was asked to come and talk on the subject of APRs, which I've been familiar with and worked with for a few years. But I also participate in this Facebook page that brought us all together here, and lots of things that have been happening on that page have stimulated me more and more and more to talk about things other than APRs. I'm going to end this talk by talking about APRs, but I'm going to start it off by talking about $1 rule and some other things. I've made some assumptions about this audience. Let me apologize up front. I'm going to read some of these slides. This is all brand new to me. In fact, half of this talk got created this morning again because everything crashed on my computer and I lost most of it. I made some assumptions about the kind of people that are going to show up here tonight. I believe that you're all activists, or you wouldn't be here. You are committed to sustaining and improving deer hunting in Michigan. You are leaders, as others have said before, and are willing to accept that there are no simple answers. And the people at this table right here can tell you that, from the DNR and the NRC. You are willing to work hard to understand the data that supports the goals of the Let Them Grow movement. And this isn't a movement. I doubt that there's ever been such a large grassroots meeting of hunters in the history of this state. You are willing to act as ambassadors to the rest of our members, to the deer hunting community, and those who are tasked with managing our herd. They're our allies. They're the ones that are going to help us. They're trying to do what's best for this state. And I'm talking about the DNR, professional biologists, the NRC. Think about that when you're active on the Let Them Grow boards. You are not angry. You are determined. You don't wish or hope that something new will be tried. You intend for it to happen. You are willing to let go of what seems to make sense based on reasoning and folklore when faced with reality. Nature does not design using logic and planning like we do. She does it by trial and error. I intend to show you some things that will challenge your intellect and challenge your beliefs and perceptions. Let 'em Go does not support $1 rule for Michigan. I served on the Lower Peninsula Deer Management Initiative with 13 other dedicated deer hunters, including Lincoln Roan. Young guys, old guys, club hunters, public land hunters, private land hunters, northern Michigan hunters, southern Michigan hunters, sophisticated guys like Leon Hank, and dirt under the fingernail rednecks like Chad Chrysler. We all came to it several years ago supporting a $1 rule, all of us. We proposed a $1 rule to the DNR, and they rejected it because it wouldn't meet the requirement that at least 50% of yearling bucks be protected. Through the course of it, all of us, to a last man, came to understand two things. $1 rule probably won't help us, and $1 rule probably cannot be accomplished in Michigan. We are asking you to trust the judgment of so many guys from different backgrounds. But as Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. And so I'm going to take some time here. You folks are important to this movement. So this presentation will be aimed at helping you to understand the reasoning that got us to where we're at. This is what brought us here. It's a Michigan tradition. We kill lots and lots of bucks. We kill lots and lots of young bucks, and we hang them on poles. And a lot of you guys are on the social media asking the question, why? And I'm going to try to answer that question because I've been hunting in the state since 1965. I'm 65 years old. I was there when it was $1 rule in this state. It's not because we don't collect the right data or enough data. We collect more data, better data, and more scientifically sound data than the big buck states of Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, that everybody always points to and says, why aren't we doing what they do? It's not because we can kill more than one buck. It's not because we have too much gun hunting or too many legal days to hunt. It's not because we hunt during the rut. And it's not because the DNR and NRC are idiots. Why is the Michigan culture the way it is? It's because we have totally different hunting culture than those other states. It is because we put far more pressure on the buck cohort than those other states do. I'm going to talk about the data sources. A lot of you guys and a lot of people on the social forums don't trust the data we're getting from the Michigan DNR. I think that's misplaced. The data that you need to not trust is the comparative data that I'm going to show you. The first data set that I use for this presentation is Michigan's annual harvest survey. The DNR gets data from an average of 28,000 hunters every year related to hunter numbers, harvest numbers, hunting locations, days spent in the field, and much more. I will be showing harvest data from other states, but it is for the most part much less reliable than the harvest data from Michigan. Examples. I cannot compare hunter numbers because important comparison states like Ohio and Indiana don't really know how many hunters they have. We do. Several Midwest states don't know how many deer are harvested because they get the information through mandatory check stations. And they do not know what the compliance rates are. What are they going to do? Call a guy up and say, did you illegally not report your deer last year? They don't know how many hunters report. It could be 10%, don't report. It could be 30%, it could be 50%. Some of them just make up a number. Like New York divides it by 0.45 because they guess that maybe 45% of hunters don't report. All mandatory, I have this in red because I want to emphasize it. All mandatory check systems are underreported, and it is not possible to know by how much, so there is no statistical reliability. Michigan, because they do a huge survey, is able to do statistical analysis and report confidence intervals. Most of the big states don't and can't. And I'm just going to real quickly show you a table here. What I do with my pointer. And this is one of 20 tables that are in the pointer's not working, that are in the annual report that Brian Frawley puts together for the DNR. And look at, there's all this data here. This happens to be statewide deer harvest. You can look here, there's 178,000 bucks harvested in Michigan. And if you look at the number next to it, it's 4,433. What's that number? That's plus or minus. That's a confidence interval. And that's plus or minus about 4%. So I can look at that and go, hey, that's a pretty good number. I don't need to be plus or minus 2% or 1%. I can make decisions based on 4%. And then you go up here, and this is a UP. Well, they only had killed 19,000 bucks. And they're plus or minus 7%. So you can look at that and know that's not quite as reliable a number. But it doesn't matter because they don't do math in the UP anyway. At least that's what I heard. Legally, Hank knows how to do math. He's an accountant, right? But the rest of you guys I don't know about, George. If you look at Indiana harvest data, there's no statistics here. I'm supposed to believe that those numbers are how many deer are being killed in Indiana. I don't know that. They don't even know how many hunters they have. This is from a mandatory reporting system. This is the methods that are in the report that Brian Frawley puts together every year. It's a detailed methods section that tells exactly how Michigan collects their data. If you haven't read this, you can't have an opinion about data collected in Michigan. It's like having an opinion about a movie that you haven't seen. Read this stuff, because we've got lots of people on our site that are saying things about how we collect data that just aren't true. And as ambassadors, each and every person in this room can help us. I was a scientist, as you heard earlier. By the way, that's all that hyperbole. I'm really just a redneck from Michigan, like a lot of you other guys are. And I want what is best for Michigan. But I peer-reviewed a lot of papers when I was a scientist for journals, for scientific journals. I can tell you a Michigan harvest survey could be submitted to and accepted in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. That's how good it is. And that's not true of any other of the other Midwest states that I've looked at. None of the big buck states. Second data source is the Michigan Annual Check Station Reports. The DNR gathers data from tens of thousands of deer every year. 25,000 deer in 2014. We biocheck about 7% of the harvest. That's higher numbers than any other state. This is a graph I made where I ranked it. Who biochecks the most deer? Michigan does, by far. Heck, in Canada, they don't biocheck any deer. All those ones down at the other end are Canada. The big buck states, most of them don't check very many deer. So we get more biological information about our deer than any other state. Check station data are probably biased. They're probably biased towards older bucks because it's a voluntary system. And most biologists think that when you have a voluntary system that people are more likely to bring a bigger buck in than a smaller one. And that's reflected in our check station data in that you don't get as many does as you do bucks, and you don't get as many button bucks as are probably killed. But we also do get supplemental data from some aging and scoring. That's not a lot, but that also biases the data. But bias in science is acceptable as long as you know it's there. We're not trying to get an exact number. We're trying to look at differences between one region and another or one point in time versus another. And I'll just show you an example of that in a minute. Some states may have some more accurate data because they get their data from a processor. People are more likely to bring all their deer, fawns, does, and bucks into a processor than they are to a check station. Check station data are not used to collect harvest numbers because they're voluntary and they're not proportionally representative of what was killed. They're used to determine age, antler characteristics, and other things. So how do you interpret data? I said it's biased. How do you interpret biased data? Well, it's useful for purposes such as change over time, like this right here is showing in the Northwest 12, the 3 years before the APRs that Kevin was talking about, introduction of APRs in 2013, and this is what was in the yearling check station as a percentage over that time. So it doesn't matter if this is really 65% average or 70%. What matters is this shift. So you can say there was a tremendous shift in the representation that was brought into the check station. So you can get really valid information from it, even if it's offset and it's biased. So actually, if it's biased towards older bucks, it was actually worse than this before. And a little better than for now. And this red line is just the 3.5-year-olds, and that's just the opposite. They're overrepresented. So they provide minimal values for younger bucks and slight overestimates of older bucks. At least we hope they're slight. My last data source was Quality Deer Management Association's annual whitetail report. The advantage is it's a tabulation of data from different states, and everything's in one place, so I can just select it and put it into a spreadsheet. Disadvantages are that they lack statistics, and we don't know how those states collected that data. But at least it gives us something to go on. And this is just what one of those tables look like. And I strongly urge everybody here to read the QDMA whitetail reports if you don't. Why not one buck rule? Well, here's a petition. Over 3,600 people signed it. It's petition to the Michigan NRC in which they slammed the NRC and DNR in so many different ways. We're not going to operate this way. Again, we see the people that are in charge of our herd as being our allies. Maybe we can help them to decide what the best thing to do is for hunters. One buck rule does not correlate. So now we're looking at yearling harvest rates from all the states that there are 36 or 37 of them here that QDMA collects. And I ranked them from the lowest percent yearling harvest to the highest. And guess where one of the best states down towards the bottom of regions is? I also, by the way, Michigan is green. Dark green is the whole state. Light green is Lower Peninsula, or SLP or NLP. But way down here is the UP. How is $1 rule a problem if the percentage of yearlings being harvested, and by the way, this has been going on for a long time in the UP, if the percentage of yearlings is that low in the UP, how's $1 rule going to help? It's lower than Illinois, it's lower than Ohio, it's lower than a bunch of other states. These are the $1 states in red. There's no correlation there. Only one out of the top 10 states is a $1 state, and that's Kansas. All the rest of them are spread across here. Now I will ask you to notice, Michigan is the worst next to New Jersey, a big hunting state. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. You're going to see a pattern here. Those states that have been hunting for a long, long time and have a whole lot of hunters and a long hunting tradition are going to be the ones that don't score as well in some of these things I'm looking at. So there is no correlation that I can see between a state having $1 rule and what their yearling harvest is. The yearless harvest rate, we'll get into that in a little while. One of those top 10 states was Alabama. You can kill 3 bucks there legally. You can kill this buck. All he's got to do is have a little bone showing above his hairline. You can only kill one that day. The next day you can kill this one. And then the next day you can kill that one. What's their yearling harvest rate? 25%, one of the top 10. Would $1 rule help them? Can't get much better than what they're doing, at least in terms of percentages. How about Pennsylvania? It's one of those top 3 traditional states. They have a 3-point APR and a $1 rule. Their yearling harvest is 49% in that chart. Before APRs, under $1 rule in Pennsylvania, the yearling harvest was 70%. $1 rule does not correlate with yearling harvest. Lots of states don't have it, but still have great age structure. Some states have it and still have poor age structure. What's going on? Northern states with lots of history, lots of tradition, huge numbers of hunters, and huge pressure on bucks cannot be helped by $1 rule. PA, Wisconsin, and Michigan I've already mentioned. They all have high yearling rates. So everybody asks me the question, could somebody pour me some water? I'm starting to dry out.
Here, right.
Hasn't had your lipstick on it? Everybody asks about Indiana, and I've already badmouthed Indiana a little bit, Chad, but so it goes. Hasn't it helped in Indiana? Maybe it has, maybe it has not. I don't know. Over time, dating from when $1 rule was instituted, the numbers of yearlings, or percentage of yearlings harvested in Indiana has fallen. But it was falling before. It was up at 65%, and it was down to 55% the year before they instituted $1 rule. And if you look at the whole United States, they've been falling all during that time too. And if anything, if you look right there, Indiana's just catching up to the rest of the nation. Is it $1 rule, or is it a trend that's happening across the country? Well, let's look at Michigan. Michigan's been falling over time too. Even before, 1/3 of the, right here, these 2 years, 1/3 of our NLP hunters were, under APR, so that brought it down a little bit. But here's a really interesting thing. That's Ohio. 2014, Michigan had a lower percentage of yearling bucks than Ohio did. How's $1 rule going to help us? Beat them. We already beat them, at least in that. So how can that be? Michigan hunters, and I know quite a few of you guys that go there, Michigan hunters know that there's lots more big bucks in Ohio than there are here. That's why they spend big bucks to go there. Facts are, yearling harvest rates